Hi, I'm Mary McIntyre and today is World Iridium Flare Day. So I'm going to share with you some of my Iridium Flare memories. So why the 20th of September? Well, Chris Dorriman back in 1997 was the first person to photograph a full magnitude iridium flare. So that was quite a thing to achieve because there were no apps back then to tell you when these things were going to be visible. When the satellites first launched, nobody knew that they were going to flare as brightly as they did, but the iridium flares just became a huge part of the astronomy community. I saw my first one probably around about the year 2000, and it was an accidental one coming out of the pub one night looking up to see a clear sky, and one just happened. I knew about them and I knew that's what I'd seen, and it was the first one I'd actually observed. But it wasn't until 2013 when I got a proper digital SLR camera that I started to get really into astrophotography that I decided to have a go at photographing them myself. So I'm going to put up a PowerPoint presentation and talk you through some of my favourite iridium flare memories. So I'm going to go through now some of my favourite iridium flare memories and share some photographs with you that I took during that period. First of all, what was an iridium flare? Well, the iridium satellites were designed with solar panels up at the top here, and then there were these three antennae that were kind of angled downwards. And the satellites were in orbit in a vertical orientation, but when the alignment was right, those antennae would just catch the sun, and in a really focused kind of area, it would be visible from the ground. And this is different from other satellites that may be visible, like the Starlink ones, for example, that are visible from the whole country and through their entire track across the sky. These were very location specific. So on any one night, you may only get one flare visible, you may get a couple, but they were only visible for a few seconds and then they faded out completely and were invisible. But some of them, when the alignments were correct, were capable of flaring to some really bright magnitudes. And that's what made them so beautiful. And then sometimes would get so bright that you could actually see your own shadow. And just seeing this satellite slowly fading out and back in again, it was just so beautiful. And they were very serene, and something that certainly became a big part of my life during the years that I was out photographing them. This was the first photograph that, it's not the first photograph of an iridium flare that I've taken, but I wasn't very good at keeping records back in 2013 because I didn't know this was going to become such a huge passion. This is Iridium 34, and this was taken on the 6th of June 2013. The first actual photograph that I took was the 3rd of June 2013, but I don't actually have a record of which satellite that was. At this point, I hadn't really perfected my imaging technique, so this isn't my favourite picture by a long way, but it's certainly the earliest one that I have that I know the name of the satellite of. This was the following year in 2014, and this is a really bright one. This was mag minus 7.9, and this is Iridium 4. When they were really bright like this, the fact that they came from nothing up here to something so bright for just a few seconds and then were gone again, when it timed your photograph correctly and made it so that the brightest part was in the center of the exposure, it made this really beautiful symmetrical flare pattern. And that's something that I strive to achieve with all of my iridium flare photos. And this is one of my favorites. It was also really cool when the iridiums would sometimes flare close to a bright star or a planet or some other interesting astronomical object. And being an astronomer myself, I was very interested in those sorts of conjunctions. And this particular one was a mag minus 7.3, so it was very bright again. And this was in the same part of the sky as the red giant star Arcturus. So I always really liked this. And it's one of those occasions as well where iridium flares, when they were bright like this, some thin cloud actually could make them flare more brightly because the clouds around them would kind of flare as well. So having thin cloud in the picture, it's one of the rare occasions as an astronomy photographer that I didn't mind having some clouds in the field of view. This is one of the brightest that I photographed. This is Iridium 60, and this was in May 2015, mag minus 8.3. I know that visually I have observed a few that were in that range, but this is one of the brightest that I've got a clear photograph of. So that was a really special one for me. And this one, this is Iridium 70, another bright flare, but because it was in a twilight sky, it didn't kind of quite shine the way that the previous picture did, but it was really close to Jupiter. And I remember that week there were lots of iridium flares at a similar time of night every night of the week, all of them really near Jupiter, and that was really fun to go out and photograph them all. And we have M44, the Beehive cluster nearby as well, which is one of my favorite clusters in the night sky. And down at the bottom there was Venus. So that was some really interesting set of flares that took place that year for me. This is another example of where the clouds have actually made the picture really spectacular, and even through fairly thick cloud I've had iridium shine through. This was predicted to be mag minus 3.9, but I'm pretty sure it was brighter than that. It could have just been the way it was interacting with the cloud, but it did look pretty special. This was the first photograph that I took that was a double iridium flare. This is iridium 80 and iridium 98, but as a bonus I got another satellite that was tumbling here through the field of view. This is the ALOS Daiichi satellite. I managed to identify that using CalSky. So occasionally the iridium satellites, you would get more than one flaring within a short time period. Sometimes there may have been about a 9-minute gap between them. Other times they were really close together, like these two were within a minute of each other. So once I'd got one double, I kind of was obsessed with finding doubles, and this was another double, which was actually an accidental double. And the first, this is iridium 68 and 74. One of them was predicted, and I knew that it was due to flare really close to the International Space Station, which is what that bright line is going through the field of view there. But what I didn't expect was that a second iridium satellite was going to flare as well. And when I went back and checked on CalSky, it turned out to be iridium 68 and 74 together. And just to really add to this picture, there was a faint meteor as well in the same field of view. So although there is a bit of cloud here and the stars are very trailed, this has always been one of my favorite iridium flare photographs, just because it kind of has so many interesting things in it. This was a triple iridium flare, one that I didn't realize was even possible. I knew that doubles were possible, but to find 3 of them in one picture, that was pretty special. And the first 2 were very close together within a minute or so of each other, but the final one was a few minutes later on. But iridium 50, iridium 90, and iridium 56, and yet one of them was fainter than the others, but the fact there were 3 together in one shot was pretty special. This is another one. I still, to this day, haven't identified the 2 faint satellites over here, but I got iridium 56 there with the International Space Station again, and an aircraft going through the field of view. But there were 2 fainter satellites that flared at a similar time. And given the fact that the orbits are looking parallel to each other and they flared at a similar time, I suspect they were iridiums, but I don't know for sure. But I still have always loved this picture as well, because it's got the space station and an aircraft and just ticking all the boxes again for me. And this one is a quadruple iridium flare. This was in 2018, and these were taken, a little kind of distance apart from each other, but this was just incredible to get iridium 31, 95, 45 and 55 in one shot. It's hard to tell, but that's actually 2 flares. If I just bring the zoomed in version, there's obviously the 2 brighter ones there, but there are 2 that are super close to each other. Sometimes the double flares looked like one track with 2 flare centers on them because they were so close together in orbit. So these were super close together in orbit, but to get a quadruple flare was something really special for me. May 2018, we found out that the iridiums that flared were going to be deorbited, and the ones that they were being replaced by were not going to flare. From a kind of light pollution, sky pollution point of view, I understand that decision. And given the current situation we're in with mega satellite constellations going up and potentially ruining the night sky, I think it is a good thing that these things don't flare anymore. But it did make me really sad that the existing network that did flare were going to disappear. This brought about the Catch the Iridium project. This was set up by Samuel Pina. And Samuel wanted us to not actually lose all of these Iridium Flare photographs. He wanted to put a repository together where we could hopefully get photographs of the entire network and put them all live on this website. And this has just been the most amazing thing. The community of people that came together to kind of celebrate Flarewell, I've made some amazing friends because of that. And there are so many photographs on here, and I'm very proud that the UK is one of the biggest contributors. Andy Stone photographed the entire network, and he is an avid Iridium Flare follower and one of the people I'm friends with on Twitter. And I was second placed with the number of observations that I put forward as well. And Ira Mollet, I think she has observed over 500 of them, so she absolutely top trumped everybody with that one. And this whole project just brought so many people together. And because I was a great contributor to this, I got my Catch the Iridium patch, which I'm very proud of and is on my space jacket, on the arm next to the space dog Leica, which is one of my favourite patches. So yeah, very, very honoured to have been part of the Catch the Iridium project, and just head over to the website and have a look at all the photos and videos there, because it's just been a really great thing to bring the community together. On the back of that, because I became good friends with Ira, she made a parody Iridium deorbit video, and I was very honoured when she asked me if I would contribute to the music on this. Some of you may or may not know that I play bass guitar, and there's a song that I really liked that I put a cover video on my Mary McIntyre bass YouTube channel, and Ira asked me if I would record some of that for her to use in this video. So it's the first time that I've actually brought my astronomy and music hobbies together in one place. The video is brilliant. All the videos I'm referring to today are in the description box, so you can go and head over and look at those yourself after this video. When we were getting near to the very end of the Iridium Flares, all the flaring satellites all deorbiting, Iridium Com were putting together something, and Ira brought together Chris Dorman, who was the guy that photographed the first maximum magnitude flare, and Samuel Pina and Ira. The four of us got together for a chat to talk about our love of Iridium Flares and sharing some of our experiences, and that was a really special moment for all of us, and we've all just become really good friends now. So again, the link to that video will be in the description box, and some parts of that video were actually in another video that was put on the Iridium Com YouTube channel as well, when they were celebrating Flarewell. So yeah, it was just so beautiful that the community came together in this way. On the 5th of December 2019, the final flaring Iridium began its deorbit, and that's it. The flaring Iridium satellites have gone. However, all is not lost, because there are still a few that are tumbling out of control, and occasionally, if you're lucky, you can still catch those, and the predictions for those are on calsky.com as well. Recently, we had an amazing comet Neowise, that was visible in our skies. And while I was doing a time-lapse picture of that comet, I had two different occasions where I saw tumbling satellites going through the field of view. The first one was this one, and it turned out to be Iridium 44, which is tumbling, which is why it gets brighter and then faint and then bright and faint again. So I was delighted to have caught one tumbling Iridium with the comet. And then later on that night, when the comet had moved much lower in the sky, there was another tumbling Iridium, and this time it was Iridium 17. So even though the actual proper flaring satellites have all gone, we do still have the opportunity to see some of the original Iridium satellites that are out there tumbling. I don't know how long they'll tumble for. I guess eventually their orbits will decay and they'll be gone as well. But yeah, keep looking out for those if any of you see them, and make sure that if you have taken any photographs of Iridium flares, that you submit them to the Catch the Iridium project. I hope you enjoyed my little trip down memory lane there. Today I have photographed 234 Iridium satellites, and there were a couple that deorbited before I got any photographs, but there are still 7 left in the network that are still tumbling. So I'm still looking whenever I'm out doing any kind of time-lapse photography or star trails photography. I always go through my pictures and look for tumbling satellites and see if maybe I've caught any of the remaining tumbling ones to complete the whole set. It's been an amazing experience, the community coming together like this, and although the flares are gone, the friendships and the community will always be there. If you have any historic photos of Iridium flares, please do submit them to the Catch the Iridium project. Samwell is still uploading stuff regularly there, and we're still building up the database of amazing photographs. If any of you have any Iridium flare stories or anecdotes, please share them in the comments below. Also, all the videos that I've mentioned in this video I will put links to down below as well, and also the link to calsky.com. So keep looking up everybody, and have a happy Iridium Flare Day.